Right, everyone, heading for another Let's Paint, and this time issue 6 of Combat Patrol. So, as I have been doing in previous Let's Paint videos, I've only been painting up to where I've been shown in the Combat Patrol tutorial. So, I am going to do the Barbgaunts. I'm going to show you basically the process that I go through to get it to basically this stage where we've got 2 good layers down. Now, I've got my wet palette over here just to help me thin out my paints a bit. Just going to as well move these out of the way because I do have a habit of finding that if I've got models behind everything, it kind of pulls focus off the model that I'm painting. So I'm using Macragge Blue as part of my decision to do a palette colour swap with the Space Marines and the Tyranids. So all I'm doing on this one is applying the Macragge Blue to the armour plates. I've obviously undercoated using a combination of a black undercoat, which I've sprayed on, followed by the Mechanicus standard grey spray to help pick out certain points, and then a Gracier contrast spray. I appreciate that doesn't come with Combat Patrol, but I can't paint without a base. I just, it doesn't work for me. So that's probably the big difference that I'm really doing. But other than that, I am following the Combat Patrol tutorials. And I am even using the very basic brush that you get with Combat Patrol rather than my really nice good quality brushes, because you know what, I want to really feel like this is me properly acting like a beginner, which is kind of liberating in a lot of ways. I am finding it quite nice in, I would almost say, go on, focus where you're supposed to focus, you horrible camera. It's the problem sometimes, it doesn't always want to focus where I want it to go because I'm using my phone, not a proper camera. Just doesn't quite do the job as well, unfortunately, at focusing myself. On the other hand, I have to admit the ability to use a phone camera sometimes for doing fine details is actually quite useful. Sometimes I find what I can do is I can, once I've got my focus on, I can use it to see that I've done all the little details. I think I'm going to have to change my wet palette paper after this one, just purely because I've really run out of space now and I'm kind of using the same places, which it shouldn't really do. Sometimes I'm just plain lazy at replacing my papers. Great wet palettes though for when you want to combine different colours together. Before I had my wet palette, all I used to do actually was get a bit of tissue, make sure it was damp, not wet, like literally kitchen paper, because it doesn't fall apart easily. And that would be it. I'd basically just kind of use that to thin out the paint. It is actually quite a good approach, I found. So I was so used to doing it that when I finally got a wet palette, I had to kind of work out how to use it properly. Another good one that I used to do if I wanted to like kind of turn a normal paint into something a lot more fluid to get into recesses was actually have a little medicine cup, and then I would put water on it, and then I would put quite a bit of paint on my paintbrush, and then just on the tip though, not the whole thing, and then just kind of dip the tip into it, and it would then kind of flow backwards into the brush and basically give me a very runny paint, which sometimes I actually like using. I've got a few videos of me doing that, like different techniques like that. Now, as has been probably said, I've said this so many times, and it's kind of one of those where eventually me doing this is going to feel redundant, but I've promised myself I will follow and record the Combat Patrol tutorials with my alternative paint scheme. But I have no doubt that I'm going to feel like a bit redundant after a while, particularly doing this one, and particularly when I'm onto bigger models where I'm going to do a lot of painting. But I think it's kind of good to show the process some days. Oh, I can't wait until I can actually play a Combat Patrol. I'm going to set a play up soon. Just going through the basics. I'm not really familiar with the up-to-date 40k rules either, so that's going to be like me working things out as I go. So I'm not, although I'm coming from years of playing Games Workshop games, I've not really played, I think, is it 10th edition 40k? So the rule set is quite, well, completely new to me, really, though I gather it's somewhat like Stormbringer. Right, there we go. So that's your first set of layers following the tutorials. Now, one layer of paint may not suffice, and so what you need to do is you need to go over again. Now, I tend to find this next layer is a lot quicker. I actually try and get it a lot thinner, my paint, and I make my brush strokes very quick. And I try and put them in one direction. ideally flowing the natural, the natural kind of flow patterns of the model. It's just from experience this. I've honestly found that if you try and do a second layer too quickly, you basically end up just pushing the paint you've already put on around. If you try and overpaint the second layer, and this is my experience, you end up with just a thicker layer, and it kind of builds up the streaks that have already existed, where I found like being nice and quick, I don't know, personally I find that it does a better job. Now go back over and just check anywhere that you might have missed, and you can see it gives you just like a solid colour then. Just the way I've learned how to do it. I mean, I'm sure some people might disagree with my approach, but art is art. You do it your own way, and you don't care what other people think when it comes to art. Okay then. Now, still have 2 more to do over here, but as you might guess, I'll kind of do those off camera, because otherwise it'll just be 15 minutes of me repeating exactly the same process. But as I said, get your first layer on, it'll be streaky, so do a second layer and it gets a more solid colour. Now if absolutely necessary, if you find that it's still too streaky, maybe do a third colour. Have a check as well, because like sometimes you'll see you might have missed little bits, like I just saw that one there. It does happen, you kind of look at it later on and you realise that something's been missed, something that hasn't quite filled in. But again, don't get big globs of paint when you're doing that, just little leftovers. Okay, so that is our Let's Paint issue 6. As you know, because I am still deciding on a colour for the flesh, that the actual painting of the Tyranid flesh will be later on. But other than that, that is, doing the armour plates on the Barbgaunts. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.